Legend has it that when archaeologist Howard Carter first entered the tomb of Tutankhamun, he found and destroyed a clay tablet on which were written the prophetic words, "Death shall come on swift wings to whoever disturbs the tomb of the Pharaoh."
Looks as though he died in some sensationally unpleasant manner.
The contorted muscles show that he struggled in the bandages.
Buried alive.
I say, look here. Death, eternal punishment for anyone who opens this casket in the name of Amun-Ra, the king of the gods. Good heavens, what a terrible curse.
Well, let's see what's inside.
Wait! You have read the curse.
If there's one aspect of the Tutankhamun discovery which people remember, it is that there was an ancient curse placed upon the tomb and that several members of the archaeological team died, or were said to have died, as a direct result of it. At the time as well, this was the aspect which captured the public imagination. For as Howard Carter painstakingly recorded the many thousands of objects removed from the tomb, the popular press rapidly got fed up with the academic side of things and turned instead to the occult and dark forces in the land of the pharaohs. They may not have known much about ancient Egypt, but they knew it was weird. The first hint of the tragedies to come was when an ominous letter arrived for Lord Carnarvon, the patron of the expedition, as he prepared to join Howard Carter for the opening of the tomb. The letter was from a well-known society occultist, warning him on no account to return to the Valley of the Kings. Carnarvon, in common with other members of his class and generation, was fascinated by the secrets of the occult. And there were even reports of after-dinner seances taking place here in the East Anglia bedroom of Carnarvon's country house, Highclere Castle, with pieces of fine furniture levitating and society ladies going into trance. Anyway, Carnarvon took the warning letter very seriously indeed and consulted a palmist and spiritual advisor to the aristocracy called Velma to find out what it could possibly mean. "If I were you," said the palmist, "I'd make some public excuse and stay here in England." To which Lord Carnarvon replied, "But what an adventure, a challenge to the psychic powers of the ages."
Pass it, Salim. Double backsheesh. Attack with backsheesh.
When Carnarvon arrived in Egypt for the opening of the tomb, there was to be another warning. At the very moment the seal of the pharaoh was being broken, a cobra was edging its way towards Howard Carter's house at the entrance to the valley. According to ancient texts, the divine cobra, the protector, spat fire and poison at all enemies and desecrators of the pharaoh. As word of the songbird's death began to spread, it was taken to be an evil omen. Lord Carnarvon and Howard Carter didn't have the time, or perhaps even the inclination, to bother with such signs and portents. But the rumour was out that they'd transgressed, and they would surely pay for it. about the 8th of March 1923, as he came out of the tomb into the dry sun of the Valley of the Kings, Lord Carnarvon was bitten on the left cheek by a mosquito. Did he but know it, the chain of events which would eventually lead to his death had begun. The next morning, Carnarvon accidentally nicked the top of the bite while shaving, and blood poisoning led to a fever. On his doctor's advice, Lord Carnarvon was rushed to Cairo, where he registered at the Continental Hotel. By now, his neck glands had swelled up, and his whole face was beginning to ache. But he still insisted on going out for the evening, and after an excellent supper at the Muhammad Ali Club, he accompanied an Egyptologist friend to the cinema. Halfway through the film, he complained of serious pains and dizziness. True to form, he sat through the show to the very end. It was his last public appearance. Blood poisoning became pneumonia, and at 2 o'clock in the morning of the 5th of April, he died. At that precise moment, the entire electricity supply of Cairo blacked out. That's to say, all 4 of the main electricity districts simultaneously. Now, this was sufficiently strange for Field Marshal Lord Allenby, the British High Commissioner, to launch a formal inquiry about it, but no explanation was forthcoming. Even more inexplicably, at the precise moment of his death, half a world away on the Carnarvon country estate, the family's favourite dog Susie howled and dropped down dead. The newspapers immediately and predictably filled the gap by attributing the blackout to the vengeance of Tutankhamun. But the idea of the curse was already, well before 1923, firmly embedded within popular culture, as was a fascination with the romance of Egyptian sorcery and stories about mysterious goings-on in the world of archaeology. Audiences were captivated by tales of those who dared to disturb the pharaoh's rest. Carnarvon had simply lived out a story that was already well known. The previous half-century had thrown up a wealth of romantic tales by the likes of Bram Stoker or Arthur Conan Doyle, based on the idea of dark powers in Egyptian tombs.
The amulet from the tomb had had an awesome baptism, for the dead hand of the mummy was stained with the blood of the poor Arab who had wrenched it from its ancient dead body, and on his throat were red marks where the 7 fingers of the mummy's hand had pressed.
But Carnarvon himself had already had first-hand experience of such dark powers. It happened 13 years before the fateful opening of Tutankhamun's tomb. On the anniversary of the pharaoh Akhenaten's death, and the day on which his spirit was said to manifest itself, the Egyptologist Arthur Weigel and a group of colleagues set out for the Valley of the Queens. Their intention was to rehearse a play designed to raise the pharaoh from the dead and to exorcise the curse which had been placed on him by the priests of Amun-Ra over 3,000 years before. Akhenaten, known as the heretic king, had banished the old gods and introduced the worship of a single god, Aten, the lord of the sun, and for this he'd been condemned by the power of the priests to wander the afterworld without a resting place for all eternity. Carnarvon, Carter and the cream of Luxor society were invited to come along and witness whatever phenomena might take place. For the rehearsal, the guests stumbled their way into the valley, and at dusk the performance began. play involved Horus, the hawk-headed lord of the underworld, complete with papier-mâché mask, begging the older gods to reunite Akhenaten's body and his soul in everlasting life. Now, it was hoped that Akhenaten himself might make a personal appearance, but just in case he didn't, Mrs. Weigel was there to play the part, dressed in yards of worsted material. Things began to go seriously and mysteriously wrong when Horus appeared on a rocky crag to exchange greetings with Akhenaten. For as Akhenaten began to speak, there was a peal of thunder, and a rushing mighty wind drowned out the pharaoh's voice. When all this had subsided, it was time for the thrilling climax of the play, a recital in full of the great hymn to Aten the sun god. "Hail to thee, thou lord of rays, thou living sun," intoned the actor. "I have come before thee to behold thy disk upon the horizon. Let me not be walled up in the tomb. Let me not be turned back, and may my body be made new when I behold thy beauties." Now, at this point, there was a sudden and violent shower of rain, which turned into a hailstorm. The rehearsal and the one and only performance of the play were cancelled on the spot. The following morning, two members of the cast reported independently that they'd had an identical nightmare. They'd dreamt that the statue of Pharaoh Ramses II from the nearby Ramesseum had come to life, opened its crossed arms, and touched them with a ceremonial flail, one on the eyes and the other on the stomach. Within 48 hours, every member of the cast and every single member of the rehearsal audience was complaining of some illness or other. The distinguished guests were sensibly requested to tear up their invitations.
Whatever the weird antecedents of the curse, they were nothing to what was to follow Carnarvon's death in April 1923. The mummy had returned with a vengeance. The story was now turning in on itself as the mythmakers got to work. As the number of apparent victims of the curse increased, it soon became difficult to disentangle the legend from the facts, for the legend had bitten the deeper of the two. But there have since been various attempts to cut through the legend and explain the curse, accepting its results, but finding a rational explanation for them.
This tomb is closed since a long time ago, and of course the amount of oxygen is exhausted. This will minimize the activity of the microbes and bacteria inside the tomb.
Nasri Iskander, a director of conservation for the Egyptian Antiquities Department, has spent many years researching environmental conditions and reduced oxygen levels inside sealed tombs.
Now, let us begin by opening the door. What will happen? The archaeologist is interesting to see what's inside. Everything is new, new kings, new history, new treasures, and he tried to get in, and directly he will breathe what is the air inside the tomb. And of course, the minimum oxygen, and he will breathe it with the bacteria and with the microbes. This will start immediately to grow inside his lung and on his body.
So the bacteria actually comes to life again inside the human body sometimes?
Yes. If the body has then not enough antibodies in the blood to protect or to stabilize the life, he may die. As they say, oh, this is a curse of the pharaohs. No curse.
Yeah.
No curse.
The curse, then, may have been carried in the very air the archaeologists breathed, or it may have been inside the mummies themselves. Dr. Saeed Mohammed Tibat of the Faculty of Medicine at Cairo University recently made the chance discovery that mummies can absorb significant levels of radioactivity from the sand in which they were buried. He further believes that the ancients eventually learned to harness this natural radioactive power as a key part of the preservation process.
As you know, radioactive material emitting rays, one of them is gamma rays. The gamma rays is used for sterilization, and if there is no such technique, there will be no mummy, because there will be no preservation. It will be bones. For example, if you can see this is a container put in the posterior part of the skull.
The back of the skull, the white oval.
And this is the containers of the chest. Because the radioactive material, it can burn the body also. And as you will see in Tutankhamun, for example. And this is, as you know, Tutankhamun. As you see, the face have some bluish discoloration on one of his cheek and beside his eyes. This is the result of displacement of the radioactive material and burning of the face, part of the face.
A lot of the books describe that as damage done when they took the mask off, by the mask being removed and taking skin with it.
You said the answer, because it takes the skin with it. But here the skin is intact. And this color, this means that this is actually the effect of something from inside, not from outside. And this is most probably the radiation effect.
So there's radiation burns on his face?
Yes, it is very clear. It is very clear on the face.
Dr. Tibat's theory goes even further. Apparently, not content with using radioactivity as a preservative, the ancients may have used it to scare tomb robbers away by displaying sinister signs, warning of a lethal dose, a kind of radioactive time bomb.
Like this. There is a bat-like structure drawn on the entrance of Tutankhamun, this bat indicating the code of the curse. When you see this code, this means that there is something dangerous inside this tomb or inside this coffin.
Are you saying then that the bat symbol acts as a kind of curse in itself, as a warning to people not to come in?
All the stories about curses are coming from those tombs having this mark. And all of them proved to be linked with the documented stories, recorded stories of curses. In 90%, it is a deadly curse, that is death, because the irradiation is trapped inside. But once it is open, for the first time, the one will receive the curse, but no one after. It is only one curse for one time.
But there's one simpler and perhaps more credible explanation. The man detailed to guard the tomb for Lord Carnarvon, Acting Sergeant Richard Adamson of the Middlesex Regiment, claimed himself to hold the key to the curse of the pharaohs. As he passed the long evenings in the valley listening to Aida on Carter's wind-up gramophone, he was so hounded by the press that he dreamt up the curse story to get them off his back. They only too eagerly fell for it, and the story got out of hand. Whatever the explanation, in fact, the curse seems only to have affected a select handful of victims. Of all those who entered the tomb of Tutankhamun, 8 happened to die within the next few years, and all of these were Europeans. But local villagers had been illegally breaking into the tombs in the Valley of the Kings and looting them for generations. Were they immune from the curse? The central character in this film, about a family of tomb robbers in the last century, was based on the great-uncle of Said Abdel Rasoul. As a 12-year-old, Said himself modelled Tutankhamun's neckpiece for Howard Carter. He and his father were among the first Egyptians to enter the tomb of Tutankhamun. Great-uncle and father lived to over 80, and son still has stories to tell.
شوي لما جوها قال لها ما نخش نقحت فيه جماعة قالت لهم يا ابوي ما نقدرش نخش دي ناس في خشت وماتت دول اللي جوها قال واحد فيهم قال ارطوني بحبل هنا ولما نشدكم تشدوني قوام دخل كان ما دخل القلميات ميتين هناك جوا المقبرة قال أرد في النفس رده قال دي مقبرة بتاعت سموم
مليانة سموم
سموم كلها سم طلع خلى شوية لما أراك.
What had caused them to die?
لا ما أقول كانوا يعملوا فيه الأجزية تحت الميتين التحنيط.
Poison fumes?
Poison, yes.
So do you believe in the curse of the pharaohs?
لا ما أعتقدش فيها أبدا.
You don't believe in the curse of the pharaohs?
ما فيش لعنة.
Why not?
The people tell you لعنة الفراعنة يعني عشان تخليك تسيب الحاجة وتمشي.
People explain that there is the curse of the pharaohs in order to leave the tombs and the mummies quite safe.
To scare people away?
To scare up people away.
The Islamic people of today's Egypt tend to have a refreshingly down-to-earth attitude towards their ancient past, unmoved by its chilling curses and its bewildering array of gods. Westerners, on the other hand, have darker and more romantic associations.
I know the power that is in the mind. And you know, the way a curse works is, I say to you, I am going to curse you. And if you believe me, it will work. That is the power of a curse. The power I have to convince you, and the power you have to believe in that curse.
Many, such as Dolores Ashcroft Nowicki, are still drawn as if by some spiritual magnet to the objects and places unearthed by the archaeologists, to potent forms of magic, strange mystical forces, and the esoteric wisdom of the older gods. Modern-day Egyptologists may scoff at such morbid or occult interests, but if anything, that makes them all the more attractive, especially to those who feel a spiritual vacuum in the West. To Dolores and her group of adepts called Arcania, these objects and places aren't just relics of a dead civilization. To them, they are direct means of communicating with the power of living gods.
You know, they talk about power. Not often you come across it staring you in the face.
It's just running straight through me. This is captured as it is that she comes to me. Great mistress of magic.
Whoever carved that knew her and I think loved her, worshipped. This must be the one that was broken.
Yes. And
they decided to destroy her, but they didn't succeed.
No.
Thank heavens. I don't think she'd let them.
I don't think she would either.
This has made Egypt for me.
Definitely.
why do people go on pilgrimages? It's the same thing.
Since it was such a civilization that existed for such a long period of time, it developed its religious life to a great degree. It had a long time to elaborate and deepen it, and the result of that for me has been, I think, it simplified it to the essence of religion.
Each god had its own particular part to play, and it was worshipped and looked upon as a living exponent of a particular essence.
Is that everything in life was sacred, and everything in life had a place, and everything in life had a particular relationship to an aspect of the divine.
Each dawn, the members of Arcania enact rituals based on ancient texts. Today, it's the Judgment of Osiris, adapted by Dolores. In these dramas, anyone can become a god.
Now is the time for the mouth of Osiris to be opened.
Anubis, the jackal-headed guardian of the tomb, releases the spirit of the dead Osiris.
Particularly the images of the gods and goddesses act, if you visualize them inside your head, act as kind of tuning devices to bring about certain awarenesses of yourself. Like
what I found was that having invoked the goddess form, it started happening to me involuntarily. That is the impact of doing ritual and invoking these god forms, because they start working on us in ways even that we are not intentionally, consciously inviting, which is why ritual is a very tricky thing, and why you have to be very careful about what you invite into yourself.
Enacting this, it's like the Oberammergau, where one man takes on the role of Jesus and is put on the cross and goes through that incredible experience. So the Osiris in this ritual goes through that same experience of being brought in as a mummy. He has this feeling, I am dead.
Hast thou take time to be at peace with the gods?
Yes.
Hast thou faced the mirror of self?
Yes.
Hast thou worked man or beast beyond its strength?
No.
Hast thou understood the life ends only to begin?
Yes.
If the script sounds more New Age than ancient, more about self-awareness or me-time than the arcane wisdom of the older gods, the international cast certainly feel they're making some sort of contact.
Osiris! Osiris! Osiris!
I have to show.
Much thank
You could even today, you could feel it coming up.
Yeah,
you feel the
Pharaoh
lines
for
of
a
power.
day.
Right.
If we all kind of get our things together as much as possible and bring all the power down very, very quietly.
Everything about this extraordinary, hoary, ancient culture was given a kind of magical resonance because nobody knew anything about it. They couldn't speak the language. They couldn't read the hieroglyphs. All of it has now been translated. Demotic, hieroglyphs, hieratic, good translations of it all exist. And the interesting thing is it has not made one penneth of difference. That people today, or a great many people today, still behave as if Egypt was the source of all the Hermetic wisdom in the world? There is no evidence for this at all. The Egyptians, in fact, as any Egyptologist knows and keeps saying patiently and hopelessly, were not abstract philosophers. They were very much pragmatic people. They concentrated on the here and now. They were practical. They liked being alive. Anybody who wants can find out exactly what the Egyptians wrote. There's a plethora of information. People don't want it.
Maybe we tend to use the gods as templates for ourselves. And I know that there are certain areas in myself where perhaps I've got these templates of the gods or goddesses, but I needed to come here to unlock them. Some I've been able to open, but there are deeper ones that I need to have a key for.
I am Atum Ra, the creator of life on earth. Who is the small creature that disturbs my rest?
Let your mercy and justice be upon him, and I, Anubis, will teach him the way of the gods. Then call him to a new birth.
It's going deep within myself to all of those areas that I haven't yet opened. And then as they're coming out, literally being reborn. So it's not leaving any closed cupboards within, it's just opening everything, seeing what's in there, and once you've opened them, they're strengths and not fears.
Well, rebirth inside the Great Pyramid works for them, even if it doesn't work for the Egyptologists. But one aspect of ancient Egyptian magic which everyone agrees did and does work is its victory over the natural processes of decay after death. Its control of all aspects of the journey on the Henu boat across the great river towards the setting sun. For the ancient Egyptians, their spiritual health in the next world was dependent on bodily preservation down here on Earth. As a result, they turned mummification into a science. Perhaps it was their obsession with life and with clinging on to as many of their worldly goods as they could that produced their obsession with death, an obsession that has recently led to an even stranger resurrection. The ancient art of preservation has been revived for a modern-day society which wants everything to live on, by the followers of Korki Ra, part mystic, part businessman.
What we use is a wet process to allow the skin and the body to stay in a very supple, beautiful manner so that it looks like it did when it passed away, and it continues to stay that way forever.
She seems to be turning from a dog of fur into a sculpture.
Yes, the rooster's going to be leaving us. We won't be able to see Rooster as she was, although she'll always be there inside of her mama form. She's a little smaller actually than when she died, but she'll be back to her actual size when we're finished.
And the feet still haven't been...
Yes, we'll turn her upside down, and then she'll have those wrapped, and we'll finish the rubber. It just soaks right into the wrappings and makes a permanent bond and seals it up and prevents any of the preserving fluids from ever coming out again.
The recipe may have changed since the days of the ancient texts, but there's no mistaking its ancestry.
What we do initially is we talk with the client, and the client, let's just say it were myself, and I would say, I would like a mummiform that looked like me. Myself, I would like an Egyptian mummiform, and I would like my face on it. What they do is they put a rubber molding on the outside, and they take that rubber molding, put it into a casting material, and they pour a bronze from a lost wax process. Put the mummiform together, and I could have it in my home for the next 30, 40 years, as long as I live, as an art piece. Until I passed away, and then when I pass away, I would be mummified, placed in that mummiform, and put in my mausoleum.
That's quite a morbid thought.
Okay. Okay, Cork, I'm going to pull the straws out, and then you'll be sitting up, okay?
Are you okay?
Mm-hmm. Ready? Okay, so... Okay.
Oh, it looks great.
There you are.
Look at all those wrinkles.
We can smooth those out, make you look like a young man.
Now, we have a variety of mummiforms. We have the Art Deco model, and we have the Egyptian model, and then we have the business suit and the lady in the dress, and so we have a variety of mummiforms, and we design anything that an individual in our day and age would like designed for themselves as a mummiform.
In the golden days of Tutankhamun, the mummiform, or personalized sarcophagus, was available only to the pharaoh. Today, anyone can have one, for a price. The standard bronze Egyptian model starts in the region of $26,000, to add to the $7,000 for the mummification itself.
And this is a real person?
This is a real person here, yes. This is Bernie Bikert.
And he's one of your clients? Or?
Yes, he's one of our clients, and he's going to be mummified when he passes on. He's in his mid-30s. I'm sure he'll have a number of years left to live. But we have his life mask in his 30s, and this is exactly the way that he wants to look, and this is how it will look on his mummiform.
If he had the tools of his trade buried with him, what would he have?
Bernie would probably have a computer.
Well, what is Bernie?
Bernie's an accountant.
What leads people to sign up in advance for mummification? Well, Janet Grew, an air ambulance nurse, made the decision 3 years ago.
Frequently, I have to encounter patients that are very critical. They are either going through the dying process or they're about to die. I have a very healthy respect for patients and the fact that they are, even if they might be in a coma, they are very aware of what's going on around them. I have a firm belief that there is something inside of me that's greater than me, not just my ego or my personality, but there's something, if you want to call it a spirit or your soul. And because of the fact that I believe that there's something inside of me, I think that my body is important to me in the sense that it's the place where I house this spirit, whatever you'd like to call it. Mummification to me means that I would be assisted through this process a very loving, safe way. To me, again, if I have an awareness that if I've passed away, the body being intact will take away some of that shock of what's going on.
As my spirit comes out of my body, after my body becomes an inappropriate vehicle for it, it temporarily stays around, is the philosophy, until there's a final destination of the body. Nothing can be destroyed, and all of us continue on. It is the condition you arrive in. For example, you left London, you arrived here in Salt Lake City. Now, you could have came by rowboat and arrived in a very poor condition, but you came by plane, and that's what I'm looking for, a nice ride.
Listening to the summum philosophy, a bizarre mix of Egyptian magic, mummification, and aerobics, fitness in this life, fitness in the next, maybe isn't so far away from ancient Egypt after all. But watching the Sumun people at work, lavishing attention on household pets, who may well turn into garden ornaments, seems a very long way away from a culture which ritually slaughtered its animals before mummifying them.
You're gonna love it. Come and look.
3 months after Rooster died, of natural causes, her owner, Kay Henry, comes to pay her a visit.
Isn't she beautiful? Oh my gosh. That's Ruru.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. She's beautiful.
She is, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
She lost a little weight in the process.
Death will do that to you.
But we're going to put the weight back on, and so that when she's completely finished. Now you can feel how supple she still is. Push on her. She's still soft inside.
Oh my gosh.
She's not hard or anything like that at all. She's just exactly like she was before. So you can still feel her jowls, her lips. Remember her lips? They're right there.
Good old rooster lips.
Yeah.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Walter, mind your P's and Q's, otherwise this may happen to you. That's really beautiful.
This is KTKK, Sandy, Salt Lake City. My name is Kay Henry. Oh boy, this is really
Kay Henry is a radio talk show host who was keen to get me on the air to talk about Tutankhamun, but not about the fact that she too has signed up for mummification.
I have a real problem with the opening of the Tutankhamun sarcophagus.
Yeah.
I mean, why don't you just leave him alone?
Well, I think, you see, it goes both ways, doesn't it? On the one hand, these wonderful treasures were brought out that are some of the greatest artifacts of Western art. I mean, that gold funerary mask must be one of the greatest pieces of sculpture ever made. On the other hand, they damaged the mummy. They took the mask off the face.
Yeah, that's the other part of it.
Oh, yeah. And
I
think that's where the curse
thing,
comes
as
from.
you say.
Yeah.
It is a sacred moment. I mean, great expense to seal themselves off forever.
Sure. Yeah.
Dr. Christopher Frelling, Professor of Cultural History, thank you so much.
I think since mummification, in a sense, is the ultimate memorialization, that you should take a few things with you. Mm-hmm. I'd like to take a microphone, but of course I really don't think that I'm going to be able to say anything. It will be a symbol. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to take a pair of headsets. Likewise, I don't know in the years that this will be opened up if we'll even know what these things are, but I suspect we will. I hope we will. I just don't want to decay in the ground, and I don't know why. I really don't think I'm going to be there or any sense of me, except for the road map that is my DNA that I've left behind. Your body is your road map. It records every event that's ever happened to you, the way you wrinkle, the way you age. All these things are your roadmap of how you lived your life and the forces that affected you and your reaction to them.
That's a nice way of putting it. Although if it's a roadmap, maybe archaeologists should be allowed to read it. You know what I mean? It's a
yes,
piece
absolutely.
The body itself becomes evidence of how people lived.
That's why I say I think it's impossible to surmise that you are going to remain intact.
It's a real anxiety. How eternal will eternal rest be? And Corky Ra has taken account of that as well, deep in the Rocky Mountains.
When I die, I may not go to heaven. I don't know if they let cowboys in. If they don't, then let me go to Texas.
And down a quarter.
Texas is as close as I've been.
Okay, that's good. Now mark it.
So this is it. Yes, Christopher, we're going to bring the road in from the back here and build a parking lot down in this area, and then about a third of the way up there, we're going to drill back into the mountain, and we go 100 meters back here into the mountain to build all the family vaults.
And is each of these a single mausoleum, or is each of these a cluster of them all down the side?
Now, they're single mausoleums. Now, we have individual mausoleums for one person, or we have family mausoleums for a whole family to be able to be put in. We're going to put in 1,000 family vaults back in there.
We'll build a beautiful facade across the front of it.
Slightly more crowded than the Valley of the Kings, I
Yes,
guess.
it is.
Maybe, despite the best efforts of Summum, the dispassionate archaeologists of 3,000 years hence will break into this place, just as in 1922 they broke into the tomb of Tutankhamun.
I know that his religion was such that he had the expectation within his own wish, and I think some things in life should be respected.
I believe in having respect for other people and their body and their possessions or whatever, and I wouldn't like the idea of someone using me for research. I think that would make me very uncomfortable.
Would you put a curse on them?
No, I wouldn't put a curse on him.
I felt poorly for him because his expectation, his last wish, his whole force of his religion told him that it was very important never to be messed with.
Perhaps in the end, the real explanation of the curse of Tutankhamun isn't about the old religion and magic spells, or even about testable things such as poison dust or radiation or autosuggestion. Perhaps in the end, it's about the fact that when archaeologists enter the places of the dead in the interests of their science, they're transgressing what is still a deeply felt taboo. A taboo about leaving our ancestors to rest in peace, and about the decomposition of the body once it has ceased to serve its function. And so, like the stories of Doctors Faustus and Frankenstein and Jekyll, all of them characters deeply embedded within the popular imagination, the scientists who dig in the sand will and should be destroyed by the results of their researches, because they have gone too far. The mummy, which was supposed to exist forever until it was disturbed, will come and get them.